The biting winter wind chased Marielle across the unforgiving Arizona territory, her swollen belly a painful reminder of all she had lost. Desperation led her to a small homestead where smoke curled from a stone chimney. An old Apache man stood in the doorway, weathered face impassive as she pleaded her case. "I'll do any work," she said, voice trembling. "Chop wood, cook meals, mend clothes, anything." His dark eyes moved to her pregnant form, lingering there before meeting her gaze. What could possibly bring these two wounded souls together in this desolate place? Would her desperate offer become her salvation or her undoing? The old Apache's unexpected reply would change everything. "Your job is be mother my children's." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The old floorboards creaked as Marielle stirred from unconsciousness. Confusion clouded her mind before memory returned. The desperate knock, the stoic Apache, then darkness as exhaustion claimed her. She now lay on a narrow bed, a threadbare quilt tucked around her. Sunlight streamed through small windows, illuminating the modest room. A fire crackled nearby, its warmth a stark contrast to the biting cold she had endured for weeks. Her hands instinctively moved to her swollen belly, relief washing over her as she felt the familiar flutter of movement. "You sleep long time." The deep voice startled her. The Apache man stood in the doorway, a wooden cup in his weathered hands. "Drink, medicine, tea." Marielle accepted the cup cautiously, the bitter herbal scent rising with the steam. "Thank you." "I'm Marielle Miller, tall bear," he replied simply, watching as she sipped. "Baby still moves?" "Yes," her voice softened. "My husband Thomas died 6 months ago." "Mining collapse?" Tall bear nodded, his expression unchanging. "Many men die for gold. Gold still in ground, men still dead." His blunt assessment matched her own bitter thoughts. After Thomas died, her in-laws had made their position clear. No Miller would raise a half-breed child. Thomas had never told them his wife carried Cherokee blood. "You said something yesterday," Marielle ventured. "About being mother to your children." Tall bear turned to a small chest in the corner. From it, he withdrew a tarnished silver locket, its surface etched with intricate designs. "My grandchildren. Government men take them 3 winters ago. Put in school far away. Cut hair, new names. No Apache words." He opened the locket to reveal a small, faded photograph of 3 children, 2 girls and a boy with solemn dark eyes. "They come back when school close. Soon, maybe. Need mother." "But their parents?" Marielle asked carefully. "Daughter, son-in-law dead. Fever 2 summers past." His fingers closed around the locket. "Children need home ready. Need family waiting." Understanding dawned slowly. Not charity, but an exchange. Her skills for shelter, preparing a home for children who might return. "I can stay until spring," she offered, calculating when her baby would arrive. "Help prepare your home for them." Tall bear studied her, assessing. "You know cooking? Sewing, garden work?" "Yes to all," Marielle replied. "My mother taught me well, and I kept house for my husband." He nodded once. "Good, rest today. Tomorrow work." He turned to leave, then paused. "Your room," he said, gesturing, "was my daughter's." After he left, Marielle slowly rose from the bed, testing her strength. The journey had taken its toll. 30 miles on foot after the stagecoach driver refused to carry her further when her money ran out. She had walked until her feet bled, slept in barns when farmers took pity, and finally stumbled upon this isolated homestead when hope was nearly gone. The silver locket had been left on the small table beside her bed. Marielle picked it up, studying the children's faces. They looked frightened in their stiff collars and unfamiliar clothes, their dark eyes holding secrets and sorrow. She understood loss reflected in young eyes. Beyond the room's doorway lay a central living space with a stone hearth, simple wooden furniture, and cooking implements. Everything was meticulously organized, but showed signs of a woman's absence, cooking pots arranged with mechanical precision rather than practical use, blankets folded with military corners rather than homey drapes. Through the window, She spotted Tall Bear chopping wood, his movements efficient and strong despite his years. How many winters had marked his face? 60, 70? His back remained straight, his hands sure with the axe. Marielle's fingers found the small buckskin pouch hidden beneath her dress, her last connection to her own mother. Inside lay a polished turquoise stone, smooth from years of worried touches. Her mother had called it a remembering stone, meant to hold memories too precious to forget. "I'll find a way forward," she whispered to her unborn child. "This man needs help preparing for his grandchildren, and we need shelter until you arrive." After that, she let the thought remain unfinished. After had become a luxury she could no longer afford. Outside, clouds gathered on the horizon, promising more snow. Marielle touched the window glass, its cold surface grounding her to this new reality. Temporary shelter, temporary arrangement. She would make herself useful. Repay this man's grudging kindness, and when spring came, decide the next step on a journey that had already taken everything but hope. Morning came, with pale light filtering through frost-covered windows. Marielle had spent her first night in restless slumber, the baby shifting uncomfortably as if sensing unfamiliar surroundings. She rose before dawn, determined to prove her worth. Tall Bear found her tending the fire, a pot of coffee already brewing. He paused, something like surprise flickering across his stoic features. "You rise early," he observed. "Work doesn't wait for the sun," she replied. Her grandmother's saying coming naturally to her lips, he nodded once, approvingly, and retrieved a worn, leather-bound journal from a shelf. The cover was stained and cracked with age, the pages yellowed. He placed it on the table between them. "My wife's," he explained, opening to reveal neat handwriting in 2 languages, English intermixed with what Marielle assumed was Apache. "She write down everything." "How to run this place," Marielle gently touched the page, recognizing lists of seasonal tasks, planting schedules, recipes, and medicinal remedies. "Your wife was very organized," she observed. "Eliza was teacher before we marry. Taught at mission school. Knew both worlds." Pride tinged his voice. "Taught me English writing. Taught our daughter both ways." Marielle studied the careful handwriting, noting the last entry dated nearly 5 years earlier. "May I read it? It would help me understand how to help properly." Tall Bear hesitated, then pushed the journal closer to her. "Yes, need to follow her ways if grandchildren come back." "When they come back," Marielle corrected gently. "Not if." Something shifted in his expression. "Government papers say school closing in spring. Children with no parents go where government decide. Sometimes other white families take them." Understanding dawned. "You're afraid they won't be returned to you." "I am old man. Apache, live far from town." His weathered hands rested flat on the table. "Government men say children need proper American home, but you're their grandfather. Their blood not enough for them." Bitterness edged his words. Marielle considered this while pouring coffee into chipped mugs. Her own situation felt suddenly less desperate compared to the possibility of children separated permanently from their family. "What if," she began carefully, "when officials come, they find not just an old man living alone, but a proper family home, with a woman to cook and clean, children well tended?" Tall Bear watched her over his coffee mug. "You offer to stay when they come, be here?" "I offer to help prepare this place as if the children were coming tomorrow. To make it a home any official would find suitable." She rested a hand on her belly. "My baby will arrive before spring. By then, I'll know if this arrangement benefits us both. What you want in return? Shelter through winter, food, safety for my child." She met his gaze directly. "And to be treated with respect, not as a servant." He considered her words, then extended his hand in the white man's way of sealing agreements. "You work, you stay. We prepare together." As they shook hands, Marielle felt the calluses on his palm, evidence of decades of hard work. "I should know about the children. Their names, ages, what they like." Tall Bear rose and retrieved a small carved wooden box from a high shelf. Inside lay treasures, a child's drawing, a small beaded bracelet, a boy's first arrowhead. He handled each item with reverence. "Joseph, eldest boy, 12 winters." Makes good arrows already. Sarah, 10 winters, quiet one, draws pictures. Little Mary, 8 winters when taken. His voice softened on the youngest name. Named for my Eliza's mother, 3 children, Marielle murmured, thinking of her own child soon to join them. 4 children in this house. 4 children, he repeated, and for the first time a hint of a smile touched his lips. Need much work, as if in agreement the baby kicked strongly, making Marielle wince. Your child is warrior, Tall Bear observed. Strong kicks. Yes, a survivor already. Like me, she thought, but didn't say. They spent the morning reviewing the journal, planning the work ahead. A list formed. Repair the leaking roof corner, clean the unused bedrooms, inventory preserved foods, check winter clothing for the returning children. Tasks that would fill days and distract from uncertainties. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft flakes that would soon blanket the world in white. But inside, something else was forming. Not yet trust, but a tentative alliance born of mutual need and shared purpose. It would have to be enough to face the winter ahead. Days settled into a rhythm as December deepened. Marielle rose with the sun, kindled the fire, and prepared simple meals from the homestead stores. Tall Bear tended livestock, hunted when weather permitted, and worked on repairs to ready the home for winter's full fury. On the 7th day, Tall Bear disappeared into the barn after breakfast and returned carrying a weathered trunk. He set it before Marielle without explanation, the brass latches tarnished with age. My daughter's things, he finally said. Rebecca, children's mother, Marielle hesitated. Are you certain you want me to go through them? He nodded once. Need woman's eyes to know what keep for girls. Inside, Marielle found carefully folded dresses, some in traditional style, others clearly made for town visits. Beneath the clothing lay personal items. A hairbrush with strands still caught in the bristles, a small mirror in a beaded case, and several pairs of moccasins in varying sizes. At the bottom, wrapped in soft deerskin, she discovered a bone flute, its surface polished from years of handling and etched with symbols she couldn't decipher. Rebecca's courtship flute, Tall Bear explained, taking it gently. Her mother teach her old songs. He lifted the instrument to his lips and blew softly. A haunting melody filled the cabin, sweet and sorrowful. For a moment his stoic expression softened, memory overtaking the present. You play very beautifully, Marielle said when the last note faded. Not my playing. Flute remembers her fingers. He carefully rewrapped the instrument. Little Mary should learn when she returns. Marielle sorted the clothing, setting aside items that could be altered for the returning children. Working with her hands settled her thoughts, a welcome distraction from the constant worry about her future. You so good, Tall Bear observed. Watching her nimble fingers repair a torn seam, my mother taught me. She said a woman's hands should never be idle. Marielle smiled faintly at the memory. Though I doubt she imagined me using these skills in an Apache home. Your mother still living? Marielle shook her head. Fever took her 3 years ago. My father followed 6 months later. Some say from grief, though the doctor called it heart failure. Tall Bear nodded understanding. Same spirit sickness took many of my people. Body keeps breathing, but spirit already gone with loved ones. The shared understanding of grief bridged something between them. That evening, Tall Bear showed Marielle the food stores, dried meat, preserved fruits, root vegetables in the cellar. His preparations were meticulous, a legacy of harsh lessons in survival. You've planned well, she observed. Winter forgives no mistakes, he replied simply. As days passed, Marielle explored the homestead further. The property included the main cabin, a sturdy barn, chicken coop, smokehouse, and a small separate structure Tall Bear called the thinking house, a place for meditation and traditional ceremonies. He began teaching her the patterns of the land, where water remained unfrozen even in deepest winter, which paths animals took during snow, how to read weather from cloud formations and wind direction. One afternoon, while airing bedding, Marielle discovered a child's drawing hidden behind a chest of drawers. Crude figures represented a family, tall father, mother in a long dress, 3 small children. Across the top, in careful lettering, Joseph, Sarah, Mary, Mama, Papa. Joseph's drawing, Tallbear confirmed when she showed him. Made summer before they'd taken. That night, Marielle placed the drawing on the shelf where they kept the flute and other family mementos, creating an informal shrine to those absent. When she struggled to sleep, the baby restless within her, Marielle often heard Tallbear moving through the house in pre-dawn darkness. Once she found him sitting before the fire, speaking softly in his native tongue. Without understanding the words, she recognized the cadence of prayer. She retreated without disturbing him, understanding that grief and hope often occupied the same space. She, too, carried both, mourning Thomas while preparing for their child. By the third week, when heavy snow isolated them completely, they had established unspoken boundaries. Tallbear never entered her room without permission. Marielle left his personal items untouched unless invited to handle them. They shared meals in companionable silence or with practical conversation about the day's tasks. Not friendship yet, but a growing mutual respect that made the isolated homestead feel, if not like home, at least like sanctuary against the winter's unforgiving embrace. January arrived with bitter winds that found every crack in the cabin walls. Marielle's pregnancy advanced, her movements growing more labored as the baby settled lower. Each morning her back ached more fiercely than the day before. Tallbear noticed, but said nothing until she dropped a bowl, unable to bend to retrieve the scattered pieces. "Sit," he commanded, guiding her to a chair. He collected the broken pottery, then disappeared into his room. He returned with a small clay jar, decorated with geometric patterns. "Medicine," he explained, removing the stopper. "For pain. My wife used when carrying Rebecca. The salve smelled of pine and something earthier." Marielle hesitated, then nodded gratefully. "Thank you. Turn," he instructed. With surprising gentleness for such weathered hands, he applied the ointment to her lower back. The relief was immediate, a warming sensation that eased the persistent ache. That night, unable to find a comfortable position for sleep, Marielle ventured into the main room. The fire had burned low, but Tallbear still sat beside it, working a piece of rawhide with careful movements. "May I join you?" she asked. He nodded, making space on the bench. For a while they sat in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the whisper of his knife against leather. "What are you making?" she finally asked. "Cradleboard," he answered. "For your child." Marielle's breath caught. "That's very kind. Baby needs proper place." His fingers worked the rawhide into supple submission. Apache babies sleep close to mother's heart, safe on her back for walking, hanging from tree branch when mother works. He showed her the partially completed frame, explaining how the carved wooden headboard would protect the infant, how the leather bindings would secure without restricting, how the shade hood would shield from sun without blocking the child's view of the world. My grandmother say, baby must see everything from beginning. Learn world is big place. His eyes remained on his work. White schools teach children world is only what's inside walls. Books, rules, small thinking. The criticism was gentle but clear. Marielle thought of the children taken from him, imagining them confined in austere classrooms, punished perhaps for speaking their native tongue. "What was Rebecca like?" she asked, changing the subject. A small smile touched his lips. "Stubborn. Like river finding way through mountain. Always questions. Always watching. Good mother. And her husband?" "Michael, white man but good heart. Worked hard. Respected our ways." His hands stilled. "Both gone same week? Fever came fast." "I'm sorry," Marielle said softly. "To lose them both, then the children. Life gives, takes away. Must keep standing." He resumed his careful work. "Your husband, how he died." Marielle described the mining accident, how the support beams had given way, how Thomas had pushed another man to safety before being crushed. She spoke of his dreams for California, for the baby he would never meet. "Brave man," Tallbear acknowledged. "Died with honor. Sometimes I'm angry with him," Marielle admitted, "for leaving us. For dying a hero instead of living as a father." Tallbear nodded, understanding. "Anger part of grief. Like fire, burns, then leaves ashes. From ashes, new growth comes. The baby kicked sharply, and Marielle winced. Strong one, Tall Bear observed. Boy or girl? I don't know. Thomas wanted a son to carry his name. What you want? The question startled her. No one had asked her preference. A healthy child, she answered automatically, then reconsidered. But if I'm honest, a daughter, someone to teach as my mother taught me. He nodded approvingly. Daughters carry wisdom. Sons carry pride. Both needed. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury. A branch snapped in the distance. Bad storm coming, Tall Bear predicted. 3 days, maybe more. Need check supplies tomorrow. Marielle yawned, the medicine and fire's warmth making her drowsy. Sleep, he encouraged. Morning comes early. She rose, steadying herself against the table. Thank you for the medicine. And for making the cradle board, he acknowledged with a slight nod. Go now. Rest. That night, Marielle dreamed of a baby wrapped in soft leather, secure in a beautifully crafted cradleboard decorated with protective symbols. In the dream, she walked confidently through forest paths, the baby watching the world from over her shoulder, while ahead walked a tall figure she somehow knew would always clear the path of danger. She woke feeling strangely peaceful, one hand resting on her belly, where the child within had finally settled into sleep. Outside, snow fell in thick, silent curtains, blanketing the world in white stillness. Within the cabin walls, for the first time in many months, Marielle felt something like safety. February brought the storm Tall Bear had predicted, 3 days of howling winds and snow so deep it reached the windowsills. On the 4th morning, as suddenly as it had arrived, the storm departed, leaving behind an eerily silent world of white. Marielle woke to a strange sensation, a tightening across her belly that came and went like waves. She had expected the baby in March, but her body seemed to have other plans. The child comes early, she told Tall Bear as he stoked the morning fire. He paused, assessing her with experienced eyes. How far apart? Pain? Every 20 minutes or so. Not painful yet, just pressure, he nodded. First babies take time. We prepare with methodical efficiency. Tall Bear gathered supplies, clean linens, his wife's birthing stool, a kettle for boiling water. From a chest he rarely opened, he withdrew a small stone mortar and pestle, intricately carved with symbols around its rim. Medicine bowl, he explained. Sacred, used for generations of Apache births. He crushed herbs with practiced movements, explaining each one's purpose. Willow bark for pain, raspberry leaf to ease delivery, cedar for protection. Others Marielle couldn't identify by smell or sight. Your wife taught you midwifery? Marielle asked between contractions that were slowly intensifying. Eliza helped many births. I watched, learned. He measured herbs with careful precision. Delivered Rebecca alone when snowstorm kept midwife away. Later, helped Eliza with many neighbor women. The knowledge comforted Marielle as morning stretched into afternoon. She walked the cabin's confines when able, rested when needed. Tall Bear remained nearby, his calm presence steadying as her discomfort grew. By evening, the contractions demanded her full attention, drawing primal sounds from deep within her chest. Tall Bear helped her onto the birthing stool, its ancient wood polished by generations of laboring women. Breathe with pain, not against, he instructed, supporting her back with strong hands. Pain brings gift. Hours blended together as Marielle surrendered to the ancient rhythm of childbirth. Tall Bear offered sips of herbal tea between contractions, wiped sweat from her brow, murmured encouragement in a mixture of English and Apache that somehow made perfect sense in her pain-altered consciousness. Near midnight, when Marielle thought she could endure no more, Tall Bear spoke firmly. Baby ready now. Next pain, push down. With the next contraction, Marielle bore down with all her remaining strength. Fire seemed to splinter as the baby's head emerged. Again, Tall Bear commanded. Once more, a final tremendous effort, and suddenly the pressure released in a rush of fluid and movement. A tiny, indignant cry filled the cabin. A daughter, Tall Bear announced, his voice gentler than Marielle had ever heard it. Strong girl. He placed the slippery newborn on Marielle's chest. where she blinked in confusion at the new world before finding her mother's face with unfocused eyes. "Hello, little one," Mariel whispered, counting fingers and toes with wonder. Perfect tiny hands, a dusting of dark hair, her father's chin, but unmistakably her mother's eyes. After delivering the afterbirth and ensuring both mother and child were stable, Tallbear helped Mariel to bed. He brought the medicine bowl, now filled with clean water and a fragrant herb. For washing, he explained. Sacred water for first cleansing. With reverence, he demonstrated how to gently bathe the newborn, supporting her head with practiced hands. Apache believed first water touches soul, not just body. Makes path for good life. Mariel watched, memorizing the gentle movements. What is the herb? Sage purifies, protects from evil spirits. He carefully dried the baby with soft cloth. What name you give her? Mariel hesitated. She had considered Thomas's mother's name or her own mother's, but something felt right about honoring the man who had delivered her child with such care. Hannah, she decided. It means grace in Hebrew scriptures. Hannah Elizabeth, she met his eyes. For your wife, if that's acceptable. Something flickered in Tallbear's expression, surprise, then a deeper emotion he quickly contained. He nodded once, his hand briefly resting on the baby's head in blessing. Hannah Elizabeth Miller, he pronounced carefully. Born in snowtime under protection of mountains. Good strong name. After ensuring they were comfortable, Tallbear returned to the main room. Through the partially open door, Mariel watched him kneel before the fire, speaking softly in Apache, the ancient medicine bowl cradled in his hands. A prayer of thanksgiving, she guessed, or perhaps a ceremony welcoming a new life. As Hannah nursed for the first time, Mariel felt a profound shift within herself, no longer just a widow seeking shelter, but a mother with renewed purpose. Outside, stars pierced the clear night sky, brilliant diamonds against velvet darkness. The world remained frozen and hostile, but within these walls, something new had taken root, something that felt, improbably, like home. Days melted into one another in the timeless rhythm of new motherhood. Hannah's needs structured Mariel's existence, feeding, changing, soothing, brief moments of rest before beginning again. The outside world receded, narrowed to the immediate circle of the cabin and the tiny being who demanded all her attention. Tallbear moved quietly through these days, maintaining the homestead while giving Mariel space to recover and bond with her daughter. He chopped extra wood to keep the cabin warmer than usual, melted snow for washing, and took on cooking duties without being asked. One evening, as Mariel nursed Hannah by the fire, Tallbear approached with something wrapped in soft buckskin. For the child, he said. Placing the bundle beside her, Mariel carefully unwrapped it to reveal an exquisite pair of infant's moccasins, impossibly small and adorned with delicate beadwork forming a sunburst pattern. These are beautiful, she breathed, running a finger over the tiny stitches. Did you make them? He shook his head. Rebecca's first moccasins, made by Eliza. The significance of the gift wasn't lost on Mariel. Are you certain? These should be saved for your grandchildren. Child born in this house is under Apache protection, he said simply. Moccasins help spirit find right path in life. That night, after Hannah finally settled into sleep in her newly finished cradleboard, Mariel found Tallbear staring into the fire, an unusual restlessness in his normally stoic demeanor. Is something troubling you? She asked. He hesitated, then retrieved a folded paper from his shirt pocket. Letter came before big snow. Didn't want to worry you before birth? Mariel's heart quickened. About the children? He nodded, handing her the letter. The government seal was imposing at the top of the page, the typewritten message brief and formal. School closing confirmed for May. Children with living relations would be returned if homes were deemed suitable, according to modern standards. An inspection would occur in early April. They might still not return them. Mariel whispered, understanding his concern. Need proper beds. Need good clothes. He gestured vaguely. Whiteways in-house. We have time, Mariel assured him. Once I'm stronger, we'll prepare everything. His eyes met hers. "You stay until then?" The question held more weight than its simple words suggested. Her original agreement had been to stay until the baby came. Now that Hannah had arrived, their arrangement technically concluded. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Hannah and I will stay at least until the children return. You helped bring her safely into this world. I'll help bring your grandchildren home." Something like relief passed across his features. "Good, better with you here." As February yielded to March, Mariel regained her strength. Hannah thrived, her alert eyes tracking movement, her tiny fingers grasping with surprising strength. Tall Bear often spoke to her in Apache, explaining that babies learned languages most easily. One morning, Mariel discovered Tall Bear had placed Rebecca's moccasins on a small shelf he'd mounted near Hannah's cradle board, alongside other protective items: an eagle feather, a small polished stone, a tiny leather pouch of sacred herbs. "Protection shelf," he explained when she noticed. "Apache tradition. Guards babies' dreams." The gesture touched her deeply. "Thank you for including Hannah in your traditions," he nodded once. "Child born in snow time has special spirit, strong to survive hard season." As days lengthened and the first hints of thaw appeared, Mariel began helping plan for the inspection. They studied the letter's requirements: separate beds for boys and girls, adequate clothing in American style, evidence of Christian influence, proper schooling materials. "They want to erase everything Apache," Tall Bear said bitterly as they made lists of needed supplies. "We'll give them what they need to see," Mariel assured him. "And once the children are home, you can teach them both ways." Together they transformed the cabin. Mariel sewed curtains from stored fabric, arranged the children's rooms with both Apache crafts and the required English books. Tall Bear built a proper dining table where lessons could be conducted. One evening, as Hannah slept peacefully in her cradle board, adorned with the protective moccasins, Mariel caught Tall Bear watching her with an unreadable expression. "What is it?" she asked. "You make good mother," he said simply. "Like Eliza, see both worlds, understand both ways." The comparison to his beloved wife startled her. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." He shook his head slightly. "More than that, you bring life back to this house." Outside, the first spring rain replaced winter's snow, drumming steadily on the roof. Inside, in the warm glow of firelight, two people from different worlds continued their careful dance of building. Trust, bound together by a sleeping infant and 3 absent children, whose return required all their combined strength and wisdom. March toasted. Wines gave way to April sunshine. The world outside the cabin transformed. Snow retreating to reveal tender green shoots, creek ice breaking with thunderous cracks, birds returning with dawn songs that filtered through the cabin windows. Hannah grew alongside spring, her newborn fragility giving way to sturdy limbs and focused eyes that followed movement with increasing curiosity. She had Mariel's dark hair but Thomas's cleft chin, a blending of bloodlines that Tall Bear noted with approval. "Mixed blood children strong," he observed. "Take best from both sides." One clear morning, Tall Bear motioned for Mariel to follow him to a small plot behind the cabin, sheltered by the southern wall. He carried a worn leather satchel that clinked softly with each step. "Garden needs preparing," he explained. "Government men expect proper vegetables." He knelt beside the thawed earth and opened the satchel to reveal a collection of garden tools. Not the crude implements Mariel expected, but finely crafted iron tools with polished wooden handles, each carved with a different animal symbol. "My grandfather made these," Tall Bear explained, handing her a trowel with a bear etched into its handle. "Learn blacksmith work from missionaries. Combine white man's iron with Apache symbols." Mariel admired the craftsmanship, running her fingers over the smooth wood and detailed carvings. "They're beautiful." "What do the animals mean?" "Each animal brings different power to growing plants." He pointed to the bear on her trowel. "Bear brings strength, protection. Wolf," he held up a cultivator with a wolf design, "brings family loyalty, teaching. Eagle, a long-handled fork with a majestic bird, brings vision, connection to spirit world." Together they worked the soil, Marielle wearing Hannah securely in the cradleboard on her back. Tolbert demonstrated how to honor the earth before planting, offering a pinch of tobacco with murmured words in Apache. Asking permission, he explained. Earth not belong to us. We belong to earth. As they worked, Tolbert shared knowledge accumulated through generations, which plants should grow beside others, how moon phases affected growth, songs that encouraged reluctant seeds. Marielle absorbed these teachings alongside the practical instructions, finding them no less valuable than the technical skills. Your people farmed before white men came? She asked. Some Apache farm, some hunt. My mother's people were plant gatherers, he replied. Know every growing thing in mountains, which heal, which harm, which feed, which speak to spirits. He showed her seeds saved from previous harvests, corn with kernels in multiple colors, beans of varieties she'd never seen, squash that would sprawl protectively around the cornstalks. 3 sisters, he explained. Corn grows tall, beans climb corn and put good medicine in soil. Squash leaves cover ground to hold water and keep weeds away. Sisters help each other grow strong. As they finished preparing the beds, a distant sound caught their attention, approaching hoofbeats. Tolbert straightened, instantly alert. Take Hannah inside, he instructed calmly but firmly. Marielle hurried to the cabin, heart pounding. Through the window, she watched a rider approach, a white man in a worn cavalry coat atop a dappled mare. To her surprise, Tolbert's posture relaxed slightly as he recognized the visitor. After a brief exchange, Tolbert brought the man inside. Captain Williams, he introduced. Former commanding officer. Now works at Indian Agency. The weathered officer removed his hat, nodding respectfully to Marielle. Ma'am, didn't realize Tolbert had company. My daughter-in-law, Tolbert said smoothly, the practiced lie coming easily now. Husband died in mining accident. Came to help with grandchildren's return. William seemed to accept this explanation, his eyes softening at the sight of Hannah. Pretty baby. How old? 2 months, Marielle answered, settling into the role Tolbert had created. I've brought news, William said, accepting coffee from Tolbert. School closing moved up. Children will be returned in 3 weeks, not May. Tolbert's expression remained impassive, but Marielle saw the slight tension in his shoulders. Home inspection? Next week, Williams confirmed. I volunteered to do it myself. Thought you'd prefer a familiar face. He glanced around the cabin. Place looks good, Tolbert. Better than most reservation homes. We've been preparing, Marielle said. The children's rooms are ready, Williams nodded approvingly. That'll help. Some officials looking for any excuse to place Indian children with white families. Claim it's for their own good. His tone suggested disagreement after delivering messages from town and accepting supplies to take back for ordering. Williams departed with promises to return for the inspection. Alone again, Tolbert and Marielle exchanged glances. 3 weeks, she breathed. Much work still, Tolbert acknowledged, but a rare smile touched his lips. But children coming home. That evening, as sunset painted the mountains in fiery hues, they sat on the porch step, Hannah sleeping peacefully in Marielle's arms. The newly turned garden soil released earthy scents into the cooling air, promising growth and renewal. We will be ready, Marielle assured him, and found she meant we in a way that surprised her, as if this place, this man, these coming children had somehow become entwined with her own fate. The promised inspection came on a clear morning when dew still sparkled on new grass. Marielle spotted the approaching riders while hanging laundry. Not just Captain Williams as expected, but 3 men, their stiff postures suggesting government officials. They're here, she called to Tolbert, who was splitting wood nearby. His axe paused mid-swing as he assessed the situation, then nodded once. Remember what we practiced, he said quietly as they moved toward the cabin. Let me speak first. Hannah was sleeping peacefully in her cradleboard. Marielle quickly smoothed her hair, straightened her dress, and put on the simple gold band that had been Thomas's parting gift, a necessary prop in their careful deception. The visitors dismounted in the yard. Captain Williams approached with an apologetic expression, flanked by two stern-faced men in dark suits. "Tall Bear," Williams greeted. "This is Superintendent Harris from the Indian Affairs Office and Mr. Jenkins from Child Welfare Services." They insisted on joining the inspection. The taller man, Harris, barely acknowledged Tall Bear before turning assessing eyes on Marielle. "And this is?" "My daughter-in-law," Tall Bear answered evenly. "Marielle. Her husband, my son, died in mining accident." Jenkins consulted a notebook. "There's no record of your son in our files." Michael was half white. Marielle interjected smoothly, the rehearsed story flowing naturally. "He was educated in St. Louis. We met there before moving west." Harris frowned. "And you choose to live here? With your father-in-law?" "My husband wanted his child to know both sides of their heritage," Marielle replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "After he died, this became even more important." The officials exchanged glances, but seemed temporarily satisfied. "We'll need to inspect the entire property," Harris announced. What followed was an exhaustive examination of everything from sleeping arrangements to food stores. They inspected the children's prepared rooms, questioning the books selected, the clothing folded neatly in trunks. Even the toys Marielle had repaired and arranged. Jenkins made notes, while Harris opened cupboards and drawers without asking permission. Williams looked increasingly uncomfortable, but said nothing. Constrained by official protocol, the atmosphere tensed when Harris discovered Tall Bear's medicine bundle hanging in the kitchen, a small leather pouch containing sacred herbs and items. "What's this?" he demanded, reaching for it. "Family medicine," Tall Bear answered, stepping forward. "For healing. Like white man's doctor kit." Harris's hand hovered near the pouch. "Pagan practices are expressly forbidden. The children have been raised as Christians now." "The bundle stays," Tall Bear said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that made Harris hesitate. "Medicine knowledge passed through generations. Children free to choose their path." The tense moment broke when Hannah began crying. Marielle moved to the cradleboard, lifting her daughter and speaking soothingly. The infant's presence seemed to remind everyone of the purpose behind their confrontation. Jenkins cleared his throat. "The living conditions appear adequate. However, we have concerns about—" He glanced at his notes. "Cultural integration and educational plans. I taught school before marriage," Marielle offered. "I'm fully qualified to continue the children's education at home until arrangements can be made for proper schooling." Harris remained skeptical. "And what of Christian instruction? These children need to continue their spiritual education." A small Bible lay on the shelf beside Tall Bear's wooden flute, another carefully planned detail. Marielle gestured toward it. "We respect all paths to the Creator." The tension might have continued had Captain Williams not finally intervened. "Gentlemen, I've known Tall Bear for 15 years. He served the United States Army faithfully as a scout during the Apache campaigns. His loyalty is beyond question." From inside his jacket, Williams produced a folded document that he handed to Harris. "This is his official commendation, signed by General Howard himself. Tall Bear saved an entire cavalry unit from ambush in '87. The United States owes him a debt." Harris reluctantly examined the military commendation, its official seals and signatures impossible to dismiss. His demeanor shifted subtly. "Very well," he said finally. "The inspection is provisionally approved. The children will be returned as scheduled, with quarterly follow-up visits for the first year." After they departed, Marielle sagged against the doorframe in relief. "That was close," Tall Bear nodded, his expression somber as he carefully rehung the medicine bundle that Harris had nearly confiscated. "They still believe our ways are wrong. Want children to forget who they are." "They won't," Marielle assured him. "Not with you to teach them." Tall Bear's hand lingered on the medicine pouch, its worn leather decorated with faded symbols and small shells. "This belonged to my grandfather. Inside carries eagle feather, sacred tobacco, healing stones. Power to protect family, connect to ancestors." His voice grew distant. "Some things government men cannot take away, even when they take everything else." Marielle gently touched the pouch. Understanding its significance went far beyond mere medicinal properties. We'll help the children remember who they are while learning what they need to navigate the changing world. As sunset painted the western sky, they sat together on the porch, planning the final preparations for the children's arrival, now just 2 weeks away. Beneath their practical discussion ran a current of shared purpose, stronger than either had anticipated when their unlikely alliance began in the depths of winter. The children's imminent arrival dominated every conversation and activity. Mariel sewed new curtains for their rooms, while Tall Bear repaired the porch steps and strengthened the corral fence. Hannah, now almost 3 months old, watched their bustling preparations from her cradleboard, dark eyes following movement with growing awareness. One evening, as Mariel finished hemming a dress for little Mary, Tall Bear entered carrying something long, wrapped in a faded red cloth. "Children need to learn both worlds," he said, placing the bundle on the table. Apache ways and white ways. He unwrapped the cloth to reveal an old Winchester rifle, its wooden stock worn smooth from years of handling. The metal barrel and action meticulously maintained despite its age. "Cavalry issue," he explained. "Given to me when I finished scout service." Mariel studied the weapon with surprise. She had known about his military service, but hadn't seen evidence of it until now. "Joseph must learn to hunt," Tall Bear continued. "Protect family. Provide food." "The officials might not approve," Mariel cautioned. "Not for officials to see," Tall Bear agreed, a rare smile touching his lips. "But boy becoming man needs to learn man's responsibilities." He demonstrated how the rifle was always kept unloaded, explaining the meticulous safety practices he would teach Joseph. "Apache boys learn bow first. Teaches patience, silence, respect for animal-giving life. White man's gun comes later, when mind is ready." Mariel watched his hands move confidently over the weapon, hands that had delivered her daughter, prepared healing medicines, and now revealed yet another layer of skill. "You were a good scout," she observed. "Best tracker in Arizona territory," he acknowledged without pride, simply stating fact. "General Howard say I saved many lives. Both sides. Warned Apache camps when soldiers coming. Gave time for women, children to hide." His eyes grew distant. "Wanted peace, not war. Sometimes only person who can stop fight is one standing in middle." Mariel realized how little she truly knew of his past, the complex navigation of 2 colliding worlds he had managed. Long before she arrived, "Will you tell the children about those days?" she asked. "Some stories, yes. Some not until older." He carefully rewrapped the rifle. "Joseph needs to understand both sides of his blood. Need to be proud of all ancestors." The conversation shifted to planning the children's education. Mariel suggested a blend of the schooling they'd received and traditional knowledge. "I can teach reading, writing, arithmetic in mornings. Afternoons for Apache learning with you." "Good balance," Tall Bear agreed. "They need both to survive changing world." The following day, Tall Bear led Mariel into the forest behind the homestead, Hannah securely wrapped against her chest. He moved with the silent grace of a lifetime spent reading the land, pointing out medicinal plants and explaining their uses, knowledge he wanted her to help pass to the children. "This one," he said, indicating a small flowering plant, "stops bleeding. This one cures stomach pain. This one helps fever dreams." He collected samples in a finely woven basket, demonstrating the proper way to harvest without harming the plant's ability to return next season. "Never take first one you find. Never take all. Always leave thanks." The lesson continued as they moved deeper into the forest. Tall Bear showed her how to identify game trails, read weather from cloud patterns, and find water in seemingly dry areas. His knowledge was encyclopedic, rooted in generations of survival wisdom. "Apache children learned these things from birth," he explained. "School take them too young, before knowledge set in bones." When they reached a small clearing, Tall Bear stopped suddenly, kneeling to examine something in the soil. His expression darkened as he traced fresh horse tracks. "Someone watching homestead," he said quietly. 3 riders. "Not from town. Officials?" Mariel asked, instinctively drawing Hannah closer. He shook his head. "Officials ride main trail. These men circle property, stay hidden. He studied the tracks further. Come 3 different days. Same horses. Should we be concerned? Yes. His answer was simple but definitive. When children arrive, they not leave cabin alone. Not until we know who watches. The peaceful afternoon took on an ominous edge. As they returned to the homestead, Tall Bear's vigilance was heightened, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line. That night, he checked doors and windows with extra care. The Winchester rifle, Marielle noticed, had been moved to a more accessible location, though still hidden from casual view. We will protect them, she said as they prepared for sleep. Hannah already dreaming in her cradle. Tall Bear nodded, his expression resolute. Family defends family. Apache way. Miller way too, I think. Yes, Marielle agreed, surprised at how natural it felt to claim this shared purpose. Miller way too. Outside, darkness settled over the mountains. Somewhere in that darkness, unknown eyes had watched their home. But inside, preparations continued for children who would need both ancient wisdom and new knowledge to face whatever challenges approached on those mysterious horses. Captain Williams arrived 3 days later, dust from the trail coating his uniform as he dismounted in the yard. His expression was grave as he greeted Tall Bear and Marielle. "I bring news," he said without preamble, and a warning. Inside, after accepting coffee, Williams produced an official envelope bearing government seals. "The children will arrive next week as planned. But there's complication." Tall Bear took the envelope but didn't open it immediately. "What complication?" "Land speculators," Williams answered, his voice low. "There's a railroad survey crew in the territory. They're mapping a potential spur line that would connect the mining operations to the main railroad." Marielle glanced at Tall Bear. "What does that have to do with us?" Williams sighed. "The proposed route runs directly through this valley." "Through your property, Tall Bear." Understanding dawned in Tall Bear's eyes. "The men watching Homestead. You've seen them?" Williams asked sharply. "Tracks. 3 riders. Circle property, stay hidden." Williams nodded grimly. "Likely hired by Elias Thornton. He's buying land all along the proposed route, sometimes by questionable means." "He cannot buy Apache reservation land," Tall Bear stated. "Your land is complicated," Williams admitted. "It was granted to you personally by General Howard for your service outside normal reservation boundaries. That makes it vulnerable to legal challenges." He pulled a worn map from his saddlebag, spreading it across the table. A penciled line cut through the familiar shape of Tall Bear's property. "They'll claim eminent domain for the railroad. Offer you pennies on the dollar." "I not sell," Tall Bear said flatly. "They'll find ways to pressure you," Williams warned. "Especially once the children return." Marielle felt cold despite the warm day. "Are the children in danger?" "Not physically," Williams assured her. "But these men play dirty. They could challenge your custody, claim the environment is unsafe. Use the fact that you're Apache against you." Tall Bear finally opened the envelope, removing official documents and a smaller envelope addressed in a child's careful handwriting. This he opened with uncharacteristic urgency, revealing a simple letter on lined paper. "From Joseph," he explained, voice softening. "First letter in 3 years. Marielle moved to give him privacy, but he shook his head, inviting her to read alongside him. "Dear grandfather, they say we are coming home. Is it true this time? The teachers say our school is closing because the government does not have money anymore. Some children are going to new families, but Miss Davis says we will go home to you. I remember the mountains and the creek where you taught me to fish. I remember grandmother's songs. Mary does not remember much. She was small when we left. I try to tell her stories so she will not forget. I am learning many things. I can read English books now. I can do sums and write this letter. But I miss learning your ways too. Miss Davis says I should be proud of being Apache. She is the only teacher who says this. Please tell us it is true we are coming home. Your grandson, Joseph P.S. Sarah does not write this letter because she is being punished for speaking Apache words. But she sends her love. The simplicity of the letter made it all the more poignant. Tall Bear carefully folded it and tucked it into his shirt pocket close to his heart. "Children, remember," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not forget everything. Williams looked uncomfortable. The official documents confirm transfer next Thursday. I've arranged to bring them myself. After discussing security precautions and legal options, Williams departed, with promises to return with the children. Once alone, Tall Bear retrieved a small wooden box from a high shelf. Unlike the finely crafted items he usually made, this box was plainly constructed. Its only decoration a carefully inscribed set of Apache symbols. Memory box, he explained, opening it to reveal a small collection of items: a child's moccasin, a wooden toy horse, a lock of dark hair tied with sinew. Add Joseph's letter. Keep safe. Mariel watched as he placed the precious letter among the mementos, handling it with reverence. We won't let anyone take their home, she promised. Not after everything they've endured to return. Tall Bear's expression hardened with resolve. Land passed from my father's father. Old ancestors' bones. Railroad men not understand this. He closed the memory box carefully. Some things worth any fight. That night, Mariel noticed Tall Bear sitting outside long after darkness fell, his rifle across his knees as he watched the tree line. The letter had brought joy, but also heightened the stakes of what they might soon face. Inside, she prepared the children's beds with fresh linens, arranging small welcome gifts on their pillows. Carved animals for Joseph, a rag doll for Mary, a beaded hairband for Sarah. Each item placed with hope that the children would find comfort in this home they barely remembered. Hannah slept peacefully, unaware of the gathering storm. But Mariel remained awake, planning defenses against threats both legal and otherwise. These children would not be uprooted again, not if she had any power to prevent it. The need for final supplies before the children's arrival necessitated a trip to town. Though reluctant to leave the homestead vulnerable, Tall Bear agreed they required items unavailable through Captain Williams' deliveries. We go together, he decided. Safer than you traveling alone. Mariel nodded, understanding his caution after learning of Thornton's land schemes. Hannah, now comfortable in the traditional cradleboard, would accompany them, strapped securely to Mariel's back. They departed at dawn, Tall Bear driving the weathered wagon while Mariel sat beside him, mentally reviewing their supply list. The journey to Copper Springs would take most of the morning, allowing time for trading and returning before nightfall. As they traveled, Mariel noticed Tall Bear wore his cavalry scout medal pinned to his shirt. A deliberate choice she understood was both protection and statement in a white town. Been 2 months since last visit, Tall Bear remarked. Town people forget I served United. States when they only see Apache, the medal gleamed. In the morning sunlight, a small silver disc bearing the profile of President Lincoln and an inscription honoring distinguished service. Despite its modest appearance, the medal represented a powerful reminder of his unique position. Between two worlds, Copper Springs emerged from the landscape after 3 hours of travel, a dusty collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road. Activity centered around the general store, assay office, and saloon that served as the settlement's heart. Their arrival drew immediate attention. Conversations halted as they drove down the main street, curious and often hostile eyes tracking their progress. Keep Hannah covered, Tall Bear advised quietly. Some here remember wars. Hold hatred still. Outside the general store, Tall Bear helped Mariel down from the wagon with formal courtesy, a deliberate performance for watching eyes. His message was clear. She was under his protection and deserved respect. Inside, the storekeeper, a balding man named Parker, greeted them with forced politeness. Tall Bear. Been a while. Need supplies, Tall Bear replied simply, handing over their list. Parker scanned it, eyebrows rising. School primers? Clothes in children's sizes? His gaze darted to Mariel and Hannah. This little one's grown mighty fast if she's reading already. My grandchildren returned from government school, Tall Bear explained. Next week, the news clearly surprised Parker. Those kids they took? They're letting them come back to you? Yes, Mariel interjected, meeting his gaze directly. Their home is with their grandfather. While Parker assembled their order, Mariel noticed a striking display case, at the counter's end. Inside lay a collection of handcrafted silver jewelry, conchos, bracelets, and pendants worked in distinctive Apache designs. "You sell Apache silverwork?" she asked Parker, surprised. The storekeeper nodded. "Some of the finest comes from over near White Mountain. Get good prices from travelers and railroad men." Tall Bear moved beside her, studying the pieces with knowing eyes. "Good craftsmanship," he acknowledged. "My father was silversmith. Taught me before soldiers came." Parker looked genuinely interested. "You make pieces like these?" "Once, long time ago." Marielle glanced at Tall Bear with surprise, another skill she hadn't known about. Before she could question further, the store's door opened, admitting 3 well-dressed men. Their conversation halted abruptly when they spotted Tall Bear. The tallest man, expensively clothed with a gold watch chain across his vest, assessed them with calculating eyes. "Well now," he drawled, "if it isn't the Apache who won't entertain visitors." Tall Bear's expression remained impassive. Thornton. The name sent a chill through Marielle. This was the land speculator Williams had warned them about. "Heard your Indian brats are coming back," Thornton continued. "Shame to bring children to a home that won't exist much longer. My land." "Not for sale," Tall Bear replied evenly. Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Everything has a price, Chief. Smart man knows when to take an offer." His gaze shifted to Marielle and Hannah, especially when he's got others depending on him. The threat, though veiled, hung in the air. Marielle stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. Thornton, I presume? Captain Williams mentioned you might attempt to pressure my father-in-law. He also mentioned he'll be bringing the territorial marshal on his next visit." Uncertainty flickered across Thornton's face. "Williams should mind his own business. A decorated U.S. Army scout's welfare is his business," Marielle countered, nodding toward Tall Bear's medal. "As is the welfare of children under federal protection." The standoff continued until Parker awkwardly announced their supplies were ready. Thornton stepped aside, but his parting words carried clearly, "Railroad's coming whether you sell or not. Only question is whether you'll have money or just memories when it does." Outside, they loaded supplies quickly. Other townspeople had gathered, drawn by rumors of confrontation. Some faces showed hostility, others curiosity, a few even respect. An elderly woman approached, pressing something into Tall Bear's hand, a small carved stone bear. "For the children's return," she said softly. "My husband fought Apache wars. Said you saved his unit at Whitewater Creek." The unexpected gesture of goodwill provided a counterpoint to Thornton's threats. As they departed, Marielle noticed Tall Bear carefully place the stone bear on the wagon seat between them. "Not all white hearts are stone," he observed quietly as they left town behind. "Thornton will cause more trouble," Marielle predicted. Tall Bear nodded. "Yes, but now we know enemy's face." The journey home was quiet, both processing the confrontation and its implications for the children's return. The small stone bear remained between them, a talisman of unexpected alliance in what was clearly becoming a battle for more than just land. The encounter with Thornton cast a shadow over the homestead. As they made final preparations for the children's arrival, Tall Bear increased his vigilance, patrolling the property boundaries each morning and evening. Marielle often found him standing silently at dawn, watching the tree line with the stillness that had made him a legendary scout. 3 days before the children's expected return, Tall Bear disappeared into his workshop after breakfast. When he hadn't emerged by midday, Marielle's curiosity drew her to the small outbuilding where he crafted items for the household. She found him bent over his workbench, absorbed in delicate work. Sunlight through the single window illuminated his weathered hands as they manipulated small pieces of silver. Nearby lay tools she hadn't seen before, tiny hammers, punches, and polishing stones. "May I watch?" she asked from the doorway. He glanced up, nodding once. As she entered with Hannah, she saw 3 silver pendants taking shape on the bench. Each bore distinctive designs, one featuring a soaring eagle, another a running horse, the third a rising sun. "For the children," he explained, returning to his meticulous work. "Welcome gifts." Apache tradition. Silver carries power, protection. Marielle settled on a nearby stool, fascinated by the transformation of flat silver discs into intricate designs under his skilled hands. You never mentioned you were a silversmith. Many things not mentioned, he replied simply. Past life, before wars. As he worked, Tallbear shared rare details of his earlier years. His father had been renowned for silverwork among the Apache, trading pieces to distant tribes and eventually to white settlers who prized the craftsmanship. He taught me when I was Joseph's age, Tallbear explained, using a tiny punch to create a detailed feather pattern. Say hands remember even when mind forgets. These are beautiful, Marielle observed as the designs took shape. The children will treasure them. Each design has meaning, he explained. Eagle for Joseph, vision, courage. Horse for Sarah, freedom, strength. Sun for Mary, new beginnings, hope. His voice softened. Help them remember who they are. The intimacy of the moment, this glimpse into skills and memories he rarely shared, wasn't lost on Marielle. As Hannah dozed against her chest, she watched Tallbear's hands transform raw material into meaningful art, understanding she was witnessing something profound in its simplicity. Will you teach Joseph? She asked. Tallbear nodded. If he shows interest. Apache ways never force teaching. Wait until child spirit reaches for knowledge. They spent the afternoon in the workshop, a comfortable silence, broken only by Hannah's occasional sounds and Tallbear's brief explanations of techniques. By late afternoon, the pendants were complete, each polished to a soft gleam and strung on leather cords. As Tallbear carefully wrapped each in soft cloth, Marielle realized these silver pieces represented more than welcome gifts. They were tangible connections to heritage, silent rebellion against the years of forced assimilation at the government school. Back at the cabin, they continued final preparations, airing bedding, preparing favorite foods mentioned in Joseph's letter, arranging the children's rooms to balance comfort with familiarity. That evening, Tallbear surprised Marielle by asking her to help him with something he had avoided throughout their months together. Children should see grandfather dressed in proper way, he explained, retrieving a bundle wrapped in deerskin from a chest. Not as white man sees me. Inside lay traditional Apache clothing he hadn't worn since the children's departure. A beautifully beaded vest, soft buckskin shirt, and a headband bearing symbols of his family line. Would you help prepare? He asked, a rare vulnerability in his request. Understanding the significance, Marielle helped him arrange the clothing for the children's arrival day. As they worked, Tallbear taught her the meaning of each design element, the story told through bead colors, the significance of stitch patterns, the protective symbols hidden within decorative elements. Children need to see pride in Apache ways, he explained. School teaches shame. Must unlearn. They'll need time, Marielle cautioned gently. The transition won't be easy for them. Tallbear nodded, his expression reflective. Cannot rush river to sea. Must follow natural path. That night, after Hannah was asleep, Marielle found Tallbear on the porch, staring at the stars. The silver pendants lay on his palm, catching moonlight in their polished surfaces. What troubles you? She asked, settling beside him. 3 years, he replied softly. Many changes. They know me as grandfather, but... He hesitated. What if they return as strangers? The rare admission of fear touched Marielle deeply. They may have changed, she acknowledged. But the essential part remains. Blood recognizes blood. He closed his fingers around the pendants. What of you and Hannah? After children settle? The question caught her off guard. Their arrangement had focused solely on the children's return, with no discussions of beyond. I haven't thought that far ahead, she admitted. There's been so much to prepare. Tallbear nodded, accepting her non-answer. But the question lingered between them as they sat in companionable silence, each contemplating a future suddenly more uncertain than it had seemed just days before. Inside the cabin, the silver pendants caught moonlight through the window, eagle, horse, and son waiting to fulfill their purpose as bridges between past and future, between lost and found. The day of reunion dawned clear and bright, as if nature herself celebrated the children's return. Tall Bear rose before sunrise to perform private rituals of thanksgiving, while Marielle prepared a special meal of foods mentioned in Joseph's letter: cornbread, dried berry compote, and venison stew simmering with wild onions. By mid-morning, Tall Bear stood sentinel on the porch, dressed in his traditional clothing. The transformation was remarkable, no longer the quiet, practical man in worn work clothes, but a dignified Apache elder, his bearing regal despite the lines hardship had etched on his face. Marielle, with Hannah securely bundled, joined him in watchful waiting. She had chosen her best dress, a simple blue cotton with lace collar that had been packed away since Thomas's funeral. The formality of their attire reflected the day's significance, not just reunion, but rebirth of family. The distant sound of wagon wheels broke the silence. Tall Bear straightened, his hand briefly touching the medicine pouch at his waist before dropping to his side. His expression remained stoic, but Marielle saw the slight tremor in his weathered hands. Captain Williams's wagon appeared around the bend, dust rising behind it. Beside him sat three small figures, their postures straight and unnaturally still. Even from a distance, Marielle noticed their uniform appearance. Identical haircuts, stiff-collared shirts, polished shoes swinging above the wagon boards. The wagon stopped in the yard. For a moment, no one moved, the children staring at their grandfather as if seeing a ghost. Tall Bear returning their gaze with equal intensity. Joseph, now 12 and taller than Marielle expected, was the first to recover. He climbed down slowly and approached, stopping a respectful distance away. His eyes moved from Tall Bear to Marielle and Hannah, questions evident in his cautious expression. "Grandfather," he said formally, the word accented with the cadence of one who had been forbidden his native language. "We have returned," Tall Bear spoke a phrase in Apache. Joseph's eyes widened slightly, but he responded in English. "They did not allow us to speak the old words. I remember some, but not well." Sarah and Mary remained in the wagon, the younger girl clinging to her sister's hand. Sarah, 10 years old, with solemn eyes too mature for her age, studied the homestead as if comparing it to memory. Little Mary, only 8, half hid behind her sister, thumb creeping toward her mouth despite obvious efforts to appear grown up. Williams helped the girls down, then handed Tall Bear a large metal footlocker painted institutional green. "Their belongings," he explained. "School regulation, 1 trunk per 3 children. 3 years of existence reduced to a single container." Marielle's heart ached at the implication. "Children," Williams addressed them formally, "you are now returned to your grandfather's custody. Remember what we discussed about continuing your studies and maintaining proper behavior." The children nodded in unison, a synchronized movement that spoke volumes about their institutional training. Williams tipped his hat to Marielle and Tall Bear, promising to return in 2 weeks to check on their adjustment. As the wagon departed, silence descended again. The children stood like small soldiers, awaiting orders rather than rushing into embraces. "You are home," Tall Bear finally said, his voice gentler than Marielle had ever heard it. "No more school rules here. This is Apache land." Something in his tone reached the children. Joseph's rigid posture softened slightly. Sarah blinked rapidly, fighting tears she'd clearly been trained not to show. Mary's thumb crept fully into her mouth, her free hand clutching a worn rag doll partially hidden in her dress pocket. An unauthorized comfort item, Marielle guessed. "Come," Marielle said, stepping forward. "You must be hungry after your journey. Food is ready inside." The mention of food broke some invisible barrier. Mary's stomach growled audibly, prompting a small giggle that she quickly stifled. Tall Bear's mouth curved in a slight smile. "Apache warriors always eat before war stories," he said. "Make spirit stronger." Inside, the children moved with careful precision, sitting only when invited, keeping silent until spoken to. The institutional trunk remained on the porch, its military green presence a stark reminder of all they had endured. During the meal, Hannah provided unexpected relief from tension. Her curious babbling and reaching hands drew reluctant smiles from the children. Mary especially seemed fascinated, edging closer to examine the baby. "Her name is Hannah," Marielle told them. "She's very happy to meet her." Her cousins. The children exchanged glances at this relationship designation. Joseph finally asked the question clearly burning in all their minds. "Are you our new mother?" He addressed Marielle directly, his voice carefully controlled. Before Marielle could respond, Tall Bear answered. "Marielle is family. Helped prepare home for your return. Hannah is family too." The simple declaration seemed to satisfy them temporarily, though questions lingered in their eyes. After the meal, Tall Bear brought in the trunk. The children watched anxiously as he placed it centrally in the main room. Something about their expressions, a mixture of attachment and shame, told Marielle this container held complicated emotions. "Would you like to show us what you brought from school?" she asked gently. The three exchanged glances before Joseph knelt to unlock it. The lid opened to reveal neatly folded uniforms, primers with English readings, a Bible, and a few personal items, each meticulously labeled with numbers rather than names. Mary reached for something partially hidden beneath clothing, a small wooden box painted bright yellow. Her prized possession, judging by the way she clutched it protectively. "May I see?" Tall Bear asked softly. After hesitation, Mary opened it to reveal a collection of colorful pebbles, feathers, and depressed wildflower, tiny contraband treasures of childhood preserved despite institutional rules. Tall Bear smiled, truly smiled, for the first time that day. "You remember," he said simply. "The old ways of collecting spirit tokens," Mary nodded shyly. "I didn't let them see. It's against rules to be superstitious." "Not superstition," Tall Bear corrected gently. "Apache wisdom. Here, such wisdom is honored." The yellow box became a bridge between worlds, a small act of resistance transformed into a symbol of continuity. As evening approached, the children remained reserved but less rigid, their eyes increasingly drawn to familiar objects around the cabin that sparked recognition. Home would take time to reclaim. But with a small yellow box of treasured pebbles, the process had already begun. The first week revealed the depth of the children's transformation. They woke at exactly 5:30 each morning without prompting, made their beds with military precision, and stood at attention until given permission to begin the day. They spoke English exclusively, addressing Tall Bear as Sir and Marielle as Ma'am, their natural voices submerged beneath layers of institutional conditioning. Nighttime brought the most heartbreaking revelations. Mary suffered frequent nightmares, waking with muffled cries she'd clearly been trained to suppress. Sarah sleepwalked, sometimes found standing in corners as if serving punishment. Joseph struggled with insomnia, patrolling the cabin perimeter like a miniature sentry. On the sixth night, a thunderstorm broke over the mountains. The booming thunder and slashing rain triggered Mary's worst episode yet. Screams that tore through the cabin, bringing everyone rushing to her bedside. "No water." "No cold water," the child pleaded, caught between sleep and waking, her arms raised defensively. Marielle reached for her, but Joseph intervened. "She's dreaming about the punishment room," he explained, his voice flat. "When we spoke Apache or broke rules, they put us in the basement with cold water on the floor." Tall Bear's face darkened with a fury Marielle had never witnessed. He stepped back, visibly struggling to control his reaction to avoid frightening the children further. Marielle cradled Mary until her sobs subsided, humming softly while Sarah hovered anxiously nearby. Joseph stood guard at the doorway, his young shoulders squared with too much responsibility. The next morning, Tall Bear was absent at breakfast. Sarah spotted him through the window, kneeling by the garden in the rain, head bowed. "Grandfather is doing medicine prayers," she whispered. The first voluntary information she'd offered since arriving. Joseph nodded. "For healing our spirits." When Tall Bear returned, his expression was resolved. He carried a small leather bundle secured with sinew. Unwrapping it carefully on the table, he revealed a set of 13 smooth stones of varying colors, each bearing a painted symbol. Apache, he said softly. Little relatives. Story stones. The children stared at the stones with flickers of recognition. Mary reached out but quickly withdrew her hand, glancing anxiously toward the door, as if expecting punishment. It is allowed here, Tall Bear assured her. Old ways are honored in this home. He arranged the stones in a circle. These belong to your grandmother. Before that, to her grandmother. Used for teaching, for healing bad dreams, for remembering who we are. Joseph translated quietly for his sisters, Apache words coming hesitantly but with growing confidence. Something shifted in the children's expressions, as awakening of buried memory. Each stone tells part of creation's story, Tall Bear explained. When placed in circle, they create path back to ourselves. That evening, rather than adhering to the school-imposed schedule of immediate bedtime, Tall Bear invited the children to gather around the fire. Anna, fascinated by the new activity, watched from Mariel's lap as Tall Bear selected the first stone, a rich brown one with a spiral symbol. First stone is Earth Mother, he began, his deep voice settling into the cadence of storytelling. From her comes all life. The children listened with increasing attention as the story unfolded through each stone. By the third stone, turquoise with a lightning pattern, representing First Thunder, Mary had edged closer to Tall Bear. By the seventh, white quartz, symbolizing the stars, Sarah's rigid posture had softened. By the final stone, black obsidian representing night protection, Joseph was helping tell parts of the story. Memories surfacing through the layers of enforced forgetting. The story stones became a nightly ritual. Mariel watched the subtle transformations, Mary's nightmares growing less frequent, Sarah's sleepwalking diminishing, Joseph's vigilance easing slightly. During the day, other small breakthroughs emerged. Sarah helped Mariel with Hannah, her natural gentleness emerging when she thought herself unobserved. Joseph accompanied Tall Bear on property inspections, at first maintaining formal distance, but gradually asking questions about plants and animals they encountered. Mary began collecting new treasures for her yellow box, no longer hiding her finds, but proudly displaying them for approval. 2 weeks after their return, Marielle discovered Sarah sitting alone on the porch, carefully untying and rebraiding her hair away from the tight, severe style imposed by the school. "May I help?" Marielle offered, approaching slowly. Sarah hesitated, then handed over the hairbrush. As Marielle gently worked through the tangles, the girl gradually relaxed. "They cut it all off when we first arrived," Sarah whispered. Said Apache hair was dirty. Marielle controlled her anger, keeping her touch gentle. "Your hair is beautiful. In many cultures, hair carries spirit strength." "Grandmother said that," Sarah replied, a small smile touching her lips. "She said my hair was like a river at night." This tiny shared memory represented enormous progress. Later, Marielle found Tall Bear adding a new stone to the story circle, a small piece of rose quartz with a spiral pattern. "Healing stone," he explained, "for new stories we make together." That night, as the expanded stone circle told its ancient tale by firelight, Marielle noticed all 3 children sitting closer to Tall Bear than before. Mary leaned drowsily against her grandfather's knee. Sarah's hand occasionally reached to touch the stones with growing familiarity, and Joseph's voice grew stronger when invited to tell portions of the story. The institutional footlocker that had held their meager possessions now sat repurposed in the corner, filled with gathering baskets and tools for the children's reintroduction to traditional skills. Its military green paint partially covered by colorful symbols, the children had begun adding tentative marks of reclamation and rebirth the month. Following the children's return brought gradual healing and adaptation. Captain Williams visited twice, his official inspections becoming increasingly perfunctory as he witnessed the children's improving well-being. The homestead settled into new rhythms, mornings for English lessons with Marielle, Afternoons for traditional skills with Tall Bear, evenings for storytelling and family bonding. The children's institutional veneer slowly cracked. Joseph began asking permission to accompany Tall Bear on longer trips around the property. Sarah's artistic talents emerged as she sketched plants and animals with remarkable accuracy. Mary's nightmares decreased, replaced by curious exploration of her surroundings. Peace shattered on a bright June morning when Marielle spotted dust clouds approaching, multiple riders moving with purpose toward the homestead. "Children, inside," Tall Bear directed calmly after assessing the situation. "Joseph, help Marielle secure the house." 5 riders emerged from the tree line, Thornton at the lead, accompanied by what appeared to be hired men and someone in an official-looking suit. Tall Bear stood on the porch, watchful but composed as the party dismounted. "Tall Bear," Thornton greeted with false joviality. "I've brought Mr. Hargrove from the Territorial Land Office and some associates to discuss your property situation." Hargrove, a thin man with wire spectacles, stepped forward, holding a leather document case. "Good morning. I have some paperwork regarding this parcel that requires immediate attention." From the window, Marielle watched Tall Bear invite the men to the outdoor table rather than inside, keeping them away from the children while maintaining civility. Joseph stood beside her, tension evident in his rigid posture. "They want our land," he whispered, understanding beyond his years. Through the open window, Marielle heard Hargrove explain the situation in bureaucratic terms. Eminent domain, railroad easements, territorial development. The language deliberately complex, designed to confuse and intimidate. Tall Bear remained silent until Hargrove opened his case, producing an official-looking document with multiple seals. "This amended land grant shows the government's reservation of mineral and passage rights," Hargrove explained. "The original document in your possession is superseded by these amendments." Tall Bear's voice remained measured. "May I see?" As Hargrove handed over the document, Tall Bear studied it carefully, his expression revealing nothing. After several minutes, he rose without a word and entered the house. "Stay with your sisters," Marielle instructed Joseph before following Tall Bear to his bedroom, where he knelt before an old wooden chest she'd never seen opened. From beneath carefully folded items, he withdrew a tooled leather folio tied with rawhide. Inside rested yellow documents protected by oiled paper, the original land grant, with General Howard's signature and presidential seal, alongside military discharge papers and a handwritten letter. "My papers," Tall Bear explained, untying a small hidden pocket in the folio's lining. "And this." He extracted a single sheet of paper, what appeared to be a hand-drawn map with notations in faded ink. The map showed the property boundaries with specific markers and measurements, but most striking were the notations along the bottom in 2 handwritings. "General Howard's supplementary agreement," Tall Bear explained, "written when government men tried this same trick 15 years ago. The document stated unequivocally that the land grant included all mineral and passage rights in perpetuity, signed by both Howard and a territorial judge. A legal safeguard created by a man who anticipated future attempts to reclaim what had been rightfully granted." "They don't know this exists," Marielle realized. Tall Bear nodded. "Howard said keep hidden, use only when truly needed." Marielle studied the document. "This invalidates their entire claim." When they returned outside, Thornton was growing impatient. "Well, the terms are quite clear. You'll be compensated fairly for improvements to the property, but the land itself must be surrendered for the railroad passage." With deliberate calm, Tall Bear placed the original land grant on the table, followed by Howard's supplementary agreement. "My papers are also clear." Hargrove's expression shifted as he examined the documents, his confident demeanor faltering. "This appears to be I wasn't aware of this additional covenant. Covenant recorded with Judge Matthews in Tucson," Tall Bear stated. "Copy in courthouse records." Thornton snatched the papers, scanning them with growing anger. "This can't be legal." "Some scribbled agreement with an old general, with territorial judge's counter-signature," Marielle interjected from the porch. And filed officially, Mr. Hargrove can verify its legitimacy in the territorial records. Thornton's face reddened. Hargrove, is this true? The Land Office representative adjusted his spectacles nervously. If it's filed as stated, then yes. A supplementary covenant with these signatures would indeed preclude the standard mineral and passage reservations. Fury flashed across Thornton's face before he controlled it. Well then, we'll need to explore other options. Perhaps a direct purchase offer? Not for sale, Tallbear stated simply, gathering his precious documents. Not now, not ever. After the visitors departed, tension lingering in their wake, Marielle found Joseph had gathered his sisters in the main room. All three watched with solemn understanding beyond their years. Are they going to take our home again? Mary asked quietly. Tallbear knelt before them, the leather folio cradled in his hands. No, your great-grandfather's land stays with family. He opened the folio, showing them the documents inside. These papers protect our home. One day Joseph will be keeper of these papers, then Sarah's sons, then Mary's children. Like the story stones, Sarah observed thoughtfully. Passing from one generation to next. Yes, Tallbear agreed, a rare smile softening his features. Paper has power in white man's world. These papers are our shield. That night, the leather folio received a place of honor beside the story stones. Different traditions, united in protection of family legacy. Testament to Tallbear's lifetime of navigating between two worlds to preserve what mattered most. Though Thornton had retreated, Tallbear knew the threat hadn't ended. Men like him have many weapons, he explained as they reinforced the homestead's security. The children were no longer allowed to wander unaccompanied, and Joseph took to carrying a small hunting knife Tallbear had given him, a gesture of trust that straightened the boy's shoulders with pride. Captain Williams brought word from town 2 weeks later, arriving with unusual urgency. Thornton's filed a petition challenging your custody of the children, he reported grimly. Claims the environment is culturally regressive and detrimental to their proper American development. The news struck like physical blows. Sarah pulled Mary protectively against her side, while Joseph moved to stand beside his grandfather. His young face hardened with determination. He cannot take children legally, Tallbear stated, though uncertainty shadowed his eyes. Normally no, Williams acknowledged. But he's hired a lawyer from Phoenix who specializes in Indian affairs cases. They're requesting a hearing before Judge Harding, who's known to favor assimilation policies. Marielle stepped forward, Hannah secure in her arms. When is this hearing? 2 weeks from Thursday. In Copper Springs. After Williams departed, the family gathered around the kitchen table. The children's fear was palpable, their hard-won security once again threatened. We need allies, Marielle said finally. People who will stand with us, Tallbear nodded slowly. Medicine Man White Feather at San Carlos. Old Army friends. Perhaps mission teacher Mrs. Calloway. And we need something more, Marielle added. Something that officially makes us family. All of us, in ways the white courts will recognize. The following day, Tallbear rode to the San Carlos reservation, returning with White Feather, a dignified elder whose presence brought visible comfort to the children. The medicine man spoke with each child individually, then gathered the family to explain what must be done. 2 ceremonies needed, he announced. One for Apache way, one for white man's law. Both make family bonds that cannot be broken. From his medicine bundle, White Feather withdrew a circular object wrapped in soft buckskin. Unwrapping it reverently, he revealed an intricately crafted silver concha belt, a wide band of leather adorned with large silver medallions, each bearing symbols of the natural world. Family belt, White Feather explained, passed through Tallbear's mother's line for 7 generations. Used in adoption ceremonies when outsiders become family. Tallbear looked startled. This was lost when soldiers came. Not lost. Protected, White Feather corrected. Your mother gave to my mother before soldiers took people away, said to keep until needed for family renewal. The belt's reappearance seemed to affect Tallbear deeply. He touched the silver pieces with reverent fingers, tracing symbols he'd known since childhood. "Belt holds power of 7 generations," Whitefeather told Marielle. "When wrapped around new family members during ceremony, ancestors accept them as blood." The medicine man began preparations for the traditional ceremony, while Tall Bear and Joseph rode to fetch Pastor Davis from the mission church. The plan formed quickly: a traditional Apache adoption ceremony, followed by a legal marriage between Tall Bear and Mariel that would make Hannah his legal daughter and secure Mariel's position as the children's stepmother in white courts. On the evening before both ceremonies, Tall Bear found Marielle alone on the porch, her expression troubled in the fading light. "You have doubts," he observed quietly. "No doubts about protecting the children," she clarified. "But marriage is significant. I want to be sure we understand each other's expectations." Tall Bear settled beside her, his weathered hands folded calmly. "In Apache way, marriage has many purposes. Protection of family, joining of strengths, sharing of burdens." He paused. "Does not always require love as white people think of it. And what do you think of it?" she asked directly. His gaze remained on the distant mountains. "I think 2 people who respect each other, who share purpose, who protect same children. This is good foundation. Better than many marriages that begin with only young people's passion." He turned to face her. "I will respect you as partner, as mother to all children in our home. Will never dishonor memory of your Thomas. Do not expect wife's duties beyond what you freely give." The simple dignity of his proposal touched her deeply. "And I would respect you as husband, as grandfather to Hannah, alongside your own grandchildren. I would honor your first wife's memory as you honor Thomas's." Their agreement, practical yet profound, settled between them like a pact. No romantic declarations, but something perhaps more durable: shared purpose and mutual respect. At dawn, Whitefeather conducted the Apache ceremony in the privacy of their home. The silver concha belt was wrapped around all 5 of them as they knelt in a circle, binding them together as Whitefeather called upon ancestors to witness the forming of new family bonds. Later that morning, Pastor Davis performed a Christian ceremony on the homestead's porch, with Captain Williams and his wife as witnesses. Joseph stood tall as his grandfather's best man, while Sarah held Hannah with solemn responsibility. The silver concha belt, now displayed prominently in the main room, gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, a symbol of unexpected restoration and renewal, of family bonds forged in adversity rather than blood. That evening, as they prepared for the coming legal battle, the children spontaneously used the word mother when addressing Marielle for the first time. The simple word, hesitantly offered, held more meaning than any legal document could convey. The territorial courthouse in Copper Springs overflowed with spectators on the day of the hearing. Word had spread throughout the region, drawing curious onlookers from surrounding settlements. The case had become a symbol of larger tensions: progress versus tradition, assimilation versus heritage, railroad interests versus individual rights. Thornton arrived with an impressive Phoenix attorney whose tailored suit and confident demeanor suggested expensive education and powerful connections. They took their place at one table, laying out documents with practiced efficiency. At the other table sat Tall Bear and Mariel, the 4 children arranged behind them. They had dressed carefully. Tall Bear in a formal black suit with his military medals prominently displayed. Marielle in her best dress with Hannah in her arms. The 3 older children in their finest clothes. A neat and respectable, but with subtle touches of Apache heritage in their accessories. Judge Harding entered, his reputation for strict assimilation policies evident in his impatient demeanor. As proceedings began, Thornton's attorney presented their case with persuasive eloquence, arguing the children deserved modern American upbringing away from regressive tribal influences. When Tall Bear's turn came, he rose with quiet dignity. Rather than speaking immediately, he reached into a leather satchel and withdrew an object wrapped in white cloth. Carefully unfolding it, he revealed a stunning silver and turquoise bracelet of extraordinary craftsmanship. "Your Honor," he began, His English deliberate and clear. "This bracelet was made by my hands last week. First silver work in 20 years. The unexpected opening caught the judge's attention. Tall Bear placed the bracelet before him. My father taught silver work. His father before him. I taught my son, who died before teaching his children." He gestured toward Joseph. "Now I teach grandson." He proceeded to explain how the bracelet represented their family's situation. Silver from the earth, shaped by fire, becoming stronger through pressure. Each turquoise stone represented a family member, set into the silver with techniques centuries old, yet producing something of undeniable value even by modern standards. "Children need roots and wings," Tall Bear concluded. "Apache ways give roots. School learning gives wings. We provide both." Pastor Davis testified next about the Christian marriage and the family's regular attendance at Sunday services. Mrs. Calloway, the former mission teacher, spoke of Marielle's educational qualifications and the children's accelerated progress in their studies. Most surprisingly, Medicine Man Whitefeather took the stand, his dignified presence commanding respect despite obvious prejudice from Thornton's table. He spoke of the ancient adoption ceremony that had bound Marielle and Hannah to the family through sacred traditions, recognized for centuries before American law existed. Captain Williams provided the final testimony, describing his military history with Tall Bear and the improvement in the children's well-being since returning home. He submitted reports documenting their progress and presented the judge with copies of commendations from 3 territorial governors praising Tall Bear's contributions to peaceful relations. Throughout the proceedings, the children remained composed, their behavior reflecting both proper schooling and inner strength. When asked directly about their preferences, each expressed clear desire to remain with their grandfather and new family. "I remember when soldiers took us from here before," Joseph stated with quiet conviction. "I don't want to be taken again." As final arguments concluded, Judge Harding studied the silver bracelet still resting on his bench. After a moment of contemplation, he delivered his ruling. Custody would remain with Tall Bear and his wife, with quarterly visits from territorial officials to ensure educational standards were maintained. The simple legal language belied the significance of the decision, recognition that heritage and progress could coexist, that family bonds transcended cultural differences. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered around them. The children's smiles, so rare in their early days home, now came easily. Mary tucked her hand trustingly into Marielle's, while Sarah proudly held Hannah. Joseph stood beside his grandfather, their matching postures reflecting shared blood and purpose. 1 year later, the silver bracelet Tall Bear had crafted for the hearing held a place of honor in their home, displayed alongside other symbols of their unique family journey: the story stones, the concha belt, Hannah's first moccasins, and a new addition, a family portrait taken in copper springs, showing all 6 of them dressed in clothing that honored both their Apache and American heritage. The railroad eventually came to the territory, but followed an alternate route Thornton had dismissed as too expensive. Captain Williams, now promoted to major, brought occasional news of Thornton's diminishing influence following failed land speculation ventures. On the anniversary of their legal victory, the family gathered around the evening fire. Tall Bear, silver tools in hand, worked on a new piece while teaching Joseph the techniques. Sarah sketched in a journal that combined English writing with Apache symbols. Mary sang softly to Hannah, who now toddled confidently between family members. Equally comfortable in the cradleboard or crawling across the cabin floor, Marielle, watching this tableau of their improbable family, recalled the desperate woman who had once pleaded, "I'll do any work." The journey from that moment to this one had been neither simple nor easy, but the family forged through shared struggle had proven stronger than blood alone could create. Outside, spring rains nourished the earth, where their combined heritage grew roots deep into Arizona soil, ancestral land that would now pass to children carrying both worlds within them.